Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to this A2i talk. In today's talk, we will hear from Danida Green Business Partnership Secretariat, who will outline the objectives and criteria for the 2024 grant applications. And in addition to this, we will also share a few examples of existing projects. To help us with this, we have Lars from Danida and our own Henrik Anker Ladefod from Access to Innovation. So thank you to both of us, or to both of you, for helping us out with this. As for the format of today, we go with the usual drill. So we start with a 20 to 25 minute presentation from Lars, followed by an example from Henrik, and there will be the option of questions from your side for the remaining 10 or 15 minutes of today's session. For questions, please raise your digital hand or just post your question in the chat. I should also say that we are recording this session, which will be available for streaming on our website at a later stage. I think that is all from my side, so let me hand over the screen to you, Lars.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to explain a little bit more about the Danida Green Business Partnerships, DGBP, which is one of the programs with a very difficult acronym. But nevertheless, it's living now for 3 years. It's the third round of applications, which has just opened. And I will take you through sort of as Thomas said, the selection criteria and the process for applications, and then we have a few examples of projects. So let me see if I can share my screen and if the technology works well. So I can't see you now, but please let me know whether you can see the full presentation mode now.
It works fine, so perfect.
Great, thanks. So so I'll make a brief introduction to the program and inform you about the application process for 2024, which has a deadline of 3rd of June this year. So Ministry of Foreign Affairs has, through the Development Corporation, engaged in various programs and facilities over the years to engage the private sector in addressing the SDGs. The DGBP is a follow-on of the program, which some may know, which was called Danida Market Development Partnerships, DMDP. DMDP had job creation and growth as the core objective, where DGBP is, as the name says, focusing on the green transition, but still with the job creation and economic growth as an important objective. So the idea about the program is that it's about partnerships. It's about combining the private sector finance and private sector competences with civil society experience and development knowledge and perhaps specific country knowledge in order to test and further develop market-based solutions which address the green transition. The DGBP projects should all address aspects which can be related to climate change or environment, and also to inclusive growth. It's partnerships between commercial enterprises and non-commercial partners. Here are some of the facts about the program. As I said, this is the 3rd year of the program. We have this year 150 million Danish kroner for grant funding. It's a challenge fund in the sense that nobody is entitled to support. It's like a competition. So I will explain how we select the project, the best projects based on the applications. There's no sector-specific focus. It could be all sectors, but on your right, you see the projects which were approved in 2022, where there are most projects in agriculture, some in forestry, and green technologies, broader speaking. But on some on circular economy as well. Also in the 2023 round, we had also on circular economy. And actually, we see that both large and medium and also small companies are engaged in the partnerships. So it's quite diverse. The companies can be Danish companies. They can also be companies outside of Denmark. It's not an instrument from the Danida side which is tied to Danish companies or Danish organizations. I should say also that this facility is administered by an external secretariat where I and a couple of other people are sitting. It's hosted by Nordic Consulting Group, so it's not managed in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs itself. It's outsourced to the Secretariat, but the Ministry is very much, of course, in close dialogue in terms of the selection of projects. So here are the countries where projects can take place, eligible countries. So basically, these are countries in the global south or in the defined as developing countries on OECD DAX list of developing countries, and where Denmark has an embassy or other development engagements some way or the other. Compared to earlier years, there are 3 new countries because Danida is opening up embassies in Bosnia, in Moldova, and in Malaysia. But otherwise, these are the same countries as has been the preceding years. So there are 2 windows, funding windows within this program. There are either the big projects, the full projects, which are granted up to 50 million, or the maturation projects, which are smaller, where we see smaller companies also engage. Because for both of these windows, it is a requirement that the commercial partners together jointly contribute 25% of the project budget, cash investments or in their time. So you could say in that sense, it's natural that the maturation window mostly attracts the smaller companies, or maybe are deterred from perhaps raising the funding for the full projects. The maturation projects are intended to be sort of more where perhaps more early in the development of the business idea, could be testing the technology, could be testing the business idea in the specific market. We accept that there is a bigger risk in terms of the maturation projects as to whether they will be able to continue with a commercial activity after the project. These are also shorter projects, only up to 18 months, where the full projects are more like scaling up a partnership which is perhaps already initiated, or it could also be new partnerships, but something which is perhaps a little bit more tested already in the market. They have a duration of up to 5 years. It's quite important, of course, that entering into these projects, all the partners are aware that these are partnerships, and it's important to work as partners and present a joint proposal for a project, even though there may be some activities that the non-commercial partners do specifically, and other activities that the commercial partners do. It's very important, of course, that there's a joint vision and the partners are working together and have a very well-established and work through idea and partnership when they present, because we see that there's a risk that these partnerships can fall apart or not continue if everything has not been discussed very thoroughly and everybody knows what they can get out of it and also what they're expected to provide during the project. So basically, what is funded? So there's as I said, there are non-commercial partners and commercial partners. So one of the non-commercial partners should be the administrative partner, who has the experience to administer such a project, the capacity to do it, and all the funding goes through the administrative partner. Normally, also the administrative partner will have a big share of the activities, but it could also be that there are other non-commercial partners that have a big share of the activities. It's also, of course, expected that the administrative partner takes care of the reporting and administration and the management of the funds. All projects, as I said, should include 25% funding from commercial partners. But the commercial partners can actually also receive some subsidies under this program. There are these very strict EU state aid rules. And if you look further in our guidelines, you see this is much more explained because it's something that is a little bit tricky. But basically, what can be supported are feasibility studies for SMEs. There could also be other studies. Then it's training, and then it's what's called experimental development, so testing of specific things, technologies or business cases, where I can really see this is something where you are testing it. So the percentages here indicate the subsidies. So it means that, for instance, if a company, as part of this project, would like to undertake a feasibility study, they should fund it. They should upfront, and then afterwards they can be reimbursed 50% of the cost, provided, of course, that that's foreseen in the budget. So it means that the companies would have to pre-fund these activities, and then they can get the subsidies as agreed in the budget and the work plan. So it's a 50% subsidy for feasibility studies, 50% for training, and 25% for experimental development, for only for very specific things within experimental development, and that's more described in the guidelines. You should not expect that the project can fund infrastructure to any large extent. That's it's not the purpose of this program. So what are the assessment criteria? So when we get project applications, maybe we get around 100 every year, something like that. Depends, of course. We go through and see which ones are eligible. Have they filled in everything? Are they in the right countries? Do they have the right constellation of partners according to that's maybe 25% which are non-eligible. And then we go through the rest and make a scoring, which is also further described in our guidelines. So these are the 4 overall criteria which we are using for the scoring. We look very much on the business idea, and this should be driven by the business idea, by the commercial partner to establish something which is viable and which can continue after the project. We don't necessarily look for the partnership to continue. That's more that's not a requirement. It's just that the commercial activity should continue, and that you should expect that the positive effects on climate environment development should continue also after the project through the commercial activities. And then, of course, we look at the development impact potential, additionality, whether this project would have taken place anyway, or the activity would have taken place anyway. We assess how feasible we think it is in the context. It's very complicated. Is it straightforward? What are the risks? How many partners are involved? Is it what's the competence of the partners, etc. to do this type of activity, something they already have experience with, or is it something that is completely new and new geographies? And then we look at the coherence and synergy with both national initiatives and also with Danish priorities in the country. In some countries, it means that it's Danish development priorities, if there's a development program. And in other countries, it could be Danish commercial priorities. If there's certain sectors that the Trade Council focus on in those countries, then we would work probably mostly in those sectors, or that would be you could say when scoring the project, that would be an added advantage for those projects which are within the priorities. So we have asked all the embassies to submit a list of priorities and what type of projects they're looking for, and then that's all on our website as well. And when we do the scoring, we look to which extent the projects are aligned to these priorities. Then a little bit more about the partners. So as I indicated, a non-commercial partner, where one should be an administrative partner, and then a commercial partner, including one international commercial partner. So the requirement is there should be at least two partners, one non-commercial and one commercial. One of the non-commercial partners should be administrative partner, and one of the commercial partners should be international. Furthermore, one of the partners should be local or have experience from the country. That means that could be one of the commercial partners or one of the non-commercial partners. So those are the basic requirements, and of course there are various ways to fulfill these. We see partnerships typically with 3, 4 partners, sometimes 5. But of course, we don't want to see projects with too many partners because it becomes very complicated. So we would like to see it as simple as possible and as well specified the role as possible. But of course, it should make sense in terms of what the project is trying to achieve. So as I indicated before, what we look for with the commercial partners is that they should improve or test a business model often in a new market. It should address environmental climate issues. There should also be jobs. We also look at the effects on the economy. The company should have the intention to stay in the market beyond the project. They should be robust enough to both co-fund the project, but also to devote the attention that is necessary for a project like this. It's often underestimated how much time and attention is actually needed for something like this, especially if it's a new market. Then for those that are, you can say, what is an international company? How do we define that? We have these criteria that it is a company that is registered in a country which is not a developing country. Developing countries are defined in the OECD DAC list of developing countries, or it could be owned by a country which is not registered in a developing country, or it could be a locally registered company also if it has sort of an ownership structure which includes a development finance institutions. In Denmark we have IFU, which could be one option. Could also be other European development finance institutions which are on the board and active. Then we would consider it to be an international commercial partner. I will jump these examples because we will hear from Henrik some examples. So I'll just go straight to the timeline. So the application deadline is 3rd of June. So there's some time to form partnerships. What we require for the application is a concept note. There's a template for that. So it's not a full project description. It's just a concept note at this stage. And then we make this assessment that I described. We ask the embassies for their input and assessments. We ask the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and by in August, we are ready to make a short list of projects, invite for interviews for those that are shortlisted, and then there's a selection process in that, and then those that are selected will get sort of a pre-approval, and then we will work with those projects, both maturation projects and full projects, to develop a full project proposal. For the maturation projects, it's not that much more than the concept note. It's more some annexes in terms of results framework and implementation plan and budgets. But for the full projects, it's more like a full project description. There's also a template, and the Secretariat sort of helps with that in the sense that we provide some advice and also comments to the drafts. So hopefully the project can be then approved finally by the ministry and start implementation. So as I said, the program is anchored in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The embassies are quite important because they comment on the projects, and some embassies are very interested in this program and do work very actively to engage partners in this. Others are perhaps less aware or less interested, but for applicants, it's definitely an advantage to be in touch with the embassy, or that the embassy knows about the project, because since they're also looking at assessing the project. And the Secretariat, yeah, we are there to provide technical support and do screening of projects and the initial selection before the interviews, and also do the monitoring of the projects. So our website, if you go to projects on the website, you can see examples of both DGBP projects, but also the earlier DMDP projects. If you go to documents, you can see all both the guidelines for the applications and also the templates that you need to use for concept note and for budgets, etc. This is all there. We also have a LinkedIn page, and the Secretariat is also there to ask questions. We invite you to do that if you have already participated in a webinar like this, and if you have looked at the guidelines and still have questions, you're very welcome to write to us and ask more about it. And this is the Secretariat, and with that I will stop the presentation if I can. Yeah, and back to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Lars Christian, for this brief but good overview. You'll get the chance to ask some elaborating questions after we hear from Henrik. Here at Access to Innovation, we've been involved in several of these projects over the time, and Henrik has been in charge of several of them, so he will just give a brief kind of overview of his experience with these types of grants. So over to you, Henrik.
Thank you, Thomas. And again, I apologize. My screen is a bit blurred because I had a small accident on my bicycle the other day, so my computer crashed a bit. I hope you can still see me.
We can.
Thomas has asked me to give sort of a brief conclusion of some of the projects we're working with, the most important things we have experienced so far. We are working with 4 DGBP projects, and we are lead administrative partner, a couple of them. And then we are been working with a DMDP project for about 2 years now, setting up grain dryers across Uganda. And I think that's the most important project I will talk from, because that's where we have most of our experience. I don't have a presentation, so it's just talking off my head, but I've made a few notes. I would say, first of all, I think the DGBP program is a great program, and the main contribution is that it facilitates partnerships, bringing together different competences from different organizations and companies to build up the required ecosystem around a business model. And that is very necessary, which if a project is going to be a success. Over the years, I've seen many Danish companies trying to get into the African market, even with appropriate technologies, etc., but they often fail. It takes many years, and they don't have the patience and resources to build up that ecosystem and to really understand the value chain they're looking at. And this is the opportunity you have if you are working with a DGBP program, is to fully understand the value chain and the context, which is very important because it's often very different from what we know from Europe. A normal DGBP or DMDP project have many components from training and RBC training, etc. But the most important for us is to prove and build up the business case in order to sustain the development, the development impact in the long run, because as we hear from Lars, that is most important to the Secretariat, that the development impact can be sustained in the long run, and that it can be, and the business model can be scaled up. And there is a schism that the target group we are often looking at or dealing with are target groups which do not have the, call it, the necessary capabilities within their financial, or they don't have the financial muscles, really. Even if you have a proven business case and it looks good on paper, you're still dealing with people in rural areas, often with poor people, with cooperatives, which do not have the possibility of raising the finance. So a business case is not just about looking good on paper and say, well, it looks as a profitable idea to bring this equipment or to do this business in Kenya or in Tanzania. It takes a long way. There's a long way from the paper to make it actually proven as a business case. And in my eyes, to prove a business case means that you can actually secure finance. And that's what has been our biggest problem in several of our projects, is to secure the finance for these vulnerable groups. And there the DGBP project is, and DMDP as well, is a great opportunity to build up that ecosystem in order to create what you can call a total package for the commercial banks to be able to give the cooperatives or the farmers or the target group a loan. Normally you're looking at a business case in Africa where you're saying, well, if proven business case, or if you're looking at criteria, you're looking maybe at a payback period of 20, let's say an internal rate of return of 25%, or a payback period maybe of 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. And also that the business model can be scaled. It's not just a one-off thing you are presenting, but to move it to that point where a commercial bank is ready for financing that business model or that business idea is a long way. And there the DGBP is helping by building up or facilitating to build up that ecosystem around that business model, which has to sustain the development objectives in the long run. And it can be in terms of training, it can be in terms of some kind of subsidies for the commercial companies, though not much. But first of all, it's about capacity building. And it has meant that we have been able to make a breakthrough in one of our own projects in Uganda, where we have been fighting with the issue about financing for a couple of years. But with the help of the DMDP project, where we have been able to go in and train the co-op leaders, the cooperative leaders, for example, in management and business understanding, that has given the confidence among the commercial banks that not only is a proven business case and a possibility for the cooperative to make money, to earn, to increase their profit, but they can actually also manage the business in the future. They can manage, for example, a drying unit. They understand what profit and loss is. They understand what the balance sheet is, etc. Because without that understanding among the co-op leaders, everything will fail if it cannot be managed in the long run. And that's, in my eyes, where the most value comes from the DMDP or DGBP project, is to build up that ecosystem, to do the last mile, which give the confidence to the commercial lenders and to the commercial banks that this is actually a project which we believe in, we can trust in, and which we're ready to offer a loan, let's say, for a 5 or 6 years period. So that's our major experience, is building up that economic system or ecosystem around the business model. And that takes time, and that is what we need also sometimes to make the right configuration, to test the equipment, etc., etc. In our project in Uganda, for example, it has given us time actually to improve the technology by 30% efficiency, at the same time decreasing the energy consumption of 30%, which makes the Danish technology even more competitive to the Chinese, Indian equipment. So there are a lot of possibilities if you have time to enter the market, and that time is what the DGBP project is giving you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henrik, for sharing those experiences. Now you will have the chance to ask questions, so please raise your hand. There's a lot of people participating. I might not see your hand. If I don't, you just interrupt and ask your question. So please go ahead. In the meantime, while you're thinking, I do have one question. Lars, Christian, you mentioned 4 assessment criteria. Are any of them more important than the others, or do they weigh equally?
They weigh equally in the scoring system. There are various sub criteria under them, and you can say they're not the same number of sub criteria under them. So without being too technical, maybe in practice some are weighed a little bit more than others. But in practice we look. I mean, we need to have this. The business case should be there. We should be sort of think that there's a good probability that this can make sense in terms of the business, and there should also be a development impact, stroke climate environment impact. So those are very important. But of course, if we think that the project is not feasible, or the partners are not able to do it, the third criteria, then of course we will not go further with that. But basically we score them, and the scores are added up. And the sub criteria under these 4 overall criteria are indicated in the guidelines, and those are the ones we use for scoring the project. So it means that there will be a group of projects which are sort of in the top level, and they will move on to interviews, and where you get a better assessment of the partnerships, etc.
Okay. Can you also perhaps just reflect a little bit, how often do you see projects being developed around B2B collaborations? Let's say a Danish company that collaborates with a East African company and jointly develop a new product or business model.
Yes, we do have quite a number of projects where there are both an international company and a local company involved. So we do have a number of those. It's important, of course, in those cases that we see that there is a sort of a commercial case for all the commercial partners. It's important that it's not just what we call sort of a CSR activity, something that the international company does because it looks good. It should also be interesting for them in terms of building a market or otherwise. So that's an important part.
Okay. I don't see any raised hands, so please just interrupt if you have a question and I cannot see your hand.
There seems to be a question in the Teams chat on whether to establish a project in a new market with a known technology. If I understand the question right, I don't know whether.
Is that understood right?
Understood. Thanks.
Yeah. So basically, I think that's very much what this program is about. I mean, so we have some projects in the maturation category which are testing the technology, but most projects are you could say, a known technology, and a company looking for new markets, or also perhaps sourcing products in a more environmentally sustainable or climate-friendly way. That's also a possibility. So you could say the whole idea about the program is also that when working in new markets, if you enter a new market, work with non-commercial partners, you have some better chances perhaps of making it, of establishing a sustainable business in that market, because that the local knowledge and the non-commercial partners will bring something to that partnership, which will also make it more interesting, both from a development perspective, but also from a business perspective. That's sort of the very idea that this would be, I don't know if we can say less risky or with more chance of success for this type of project than if the company has just entered the market without any non-commercial partners. So I think that's very core in this program. Yes.
Okay. My question was actually also, so there would be something about getting the business registration, getting import license, if there's some demo products that have to be introduced, and so on and so forth. If there's some sort of commitment that we need to show that the commercial partner is serious about this. If not, I would just be afraid that it would be considered too risky a venture, because it's a rather small commercial partner, and they are definitely committed. We are sure of that, but they don't have experience in Africa previously. So maybe it's too general a question.
I mean, we have seen projects which came to a halt because they couldn't get the import licenses, or there were specific aspects which where they couldn't really come to grip with that administrative aspects or things like that. So that is a risk. I think it depends on the case, of course. It is very important if you are a non-commercial partner, potential non-commercial partner, then of course you should make sure that the company knows what they're getting into, so they don't waste time and money on something which they cannot see through.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Amit. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm calling from India. I just wanted to understand that how important is the size of the commercial partner from the non-OLDC country? How much is there a criteria, at least even if it is not written, that as too small organization should not be there, or it should not be too big, something like that?
So you're thinking about the commercial partners or the non-commercial partners?
Yes, the commercial.
Yeah.
No, the commercial partner.
Yeah. So there's a requirement that there should be at least one international commercial partner because of the international collaboration aspect of this program. So there could also be local commercial partners, but there should be at least one international commercial partner as per the definitions that are indicated.
Yeah, that we got. What I was asking is there a criteria about size of that international commercial partner?
Okay.
That it should be minimum the size of turnover you're looking
No,
at.
there's no specific criteria on the size of the international commercial partner. What is important is to see that they actually have the capacity to engage in such a program, and they have the you could say the commercial motivation and incentives to do that as well, and it's actually realistic that they can stay engaged and also contribute to providing their own funding of the program. And then of course it's very important that in the concept note it's well described how the various partners contribute to the project, so that we see sometimes that this is sort of an international partner which doesn't really have a very active role in the project, and and we can sort of sense that maybe more just to have a commercial partner engaged. So it's of course important that we see that it makes sense in terms of the project, the role of the commercial partner.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Alberto.
Yeah, hi colleagues, good morning, and Thomas, colleagues, thanks for organizing this. That's super useful. I have a couple of questions, but I'll be telegraphic. The first one is, so sorry, I'm Alberto. I am from Save the Children, Denmark in the first place. One is around the geographies. I've seen that there is no much previous projects funded in the Middle East and North Africa, if that's the right way of looking at them. I was just wondering why, if there is any particular reason that maybe you've seen in some of the application, why there is no much successful projects there. And then maybe a second question is just if you, based on experience from previous applications, if you have any sort of don'ts for non-commercial partners specifically, like things that you've seen that are being repeated as somehow mistakes by non-commercial partners that you would recommend or give tips about. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, we are very interested to get projects also in the countries on the list from North Africa and from the Middle East. I think the reason why there hasn't been so many is there hasn't been so many applications, so it's we get a lot of applications from East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, also other countries from East Africa sometimes. Very few from North Africa, very few from Latin America, some from Asia. So it depends a little bit on the number of applications as well. So there's no sort of priority for any country like that. It's we'd like to see a spread of projects. And if there are specific don'ts in the application process, don't not read the guidelines. If you, I mean, you get a long way in reading the guidelines because they're actually, you know, very very specific. So follow the concept, the templates, and it's a good idea also. You know, you're welcome to engage with us if you have project ideas, if you have partnerships where you see that this could be a possibility. Of course, we don't give any pre-approvals or anything like that, but we can also, you know, say, okay, when we hear this, have you thought about this and that? And so you're welcome to contact us for a chat on Teams or otherwise if you have some ideas and some partnerships which are emerging and you want to test that before going into writing the concept note, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. We have one final question from Olav.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Lars Christian, for this great overview. You focus on, or we should focus on climate and prove that we give input to environmental improvement. I could imagine that often you design your new projects in more CE terms, circular economic terms. And I noticed that you had one project where you called it a circular economy project. Could you elaborate a little more on how circular economy comes into to the formula?
Yeah, so I think there are a number of projects which are also in the new round, which are on, for instance, on sorting waste recycling. So both we have bio waste. It's a project in Kenya where they are treating bio waste, and they have done that from markets and from industrial sites and more larger. Now they're through this project, they want to then expand to households and collect bio waste from households in a specific town in Kenya, and include that in their business, which is not that easy because you need some sorting, pre-sorting, and then network or logistics, etc. So that's one example. We also have plastic, several projects with plastic recycling collection, where you have these, you work with these groups that waste pickers and perhaps with aggregators who then sort the plastic and then get that treated also in an industrial manner. And so I think those are maybe the most common that we have in terms of circular economy.
Okay.
Thank you. Time is unfortunately up, but thank you very much, Lars Christian, for giving this good overview. And thank you, Henrik, for sharing your experiences. I think that has been helpful. Let me just give a very short advertisement for our next A2i talk, which is on the 12th of April. Here we will hear from Henrik Wollesen from Engsko United Milling System, who will talk about his experience with raising capital, for example, from IFU, but also from other capital providers. So that is our next talk on 12th of April. But once again, thank you very much and have a great weekend when you get to that.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.